What's up, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane and the beginning of the LS Swap series. So we have the GTO pulled into the garage, as you can see. Have it up on jack stands. Name of the game is going to be to get this motor and trans out of here. So fingers crossed it doesn't fight us too much. So those of you who are not familiar with this car, I bought this GTO. This is a 2004 GTO, so this is an LS1, not an LS2, with the T56 transmission. I bought it at auction for this intended purpose, for pulling the drivetrain out and having it be a donor vehicle. Basically, the price I paid for it is less than what I was finding LS T56 combos out of a car with unknown, if they even run or not. This is a running, driving car. But it is wrecked and very, very poorly repaired. I'll kind of show you guys this damage as we go along, but this is one of those, classic auction scenarios where somebody probably bought this wrecked, took it back, literally sheet metal screwed on a fender. This looks like a spray paint job to match the yellow somewhat, and then just kind of booger welded it back together and probably sent it back to the auction in hopes that somebody would buy it, not thinking it was that damaged, which is kind of a crappy thing to do, actually very crappy thing to do. But for us, I didn't care about that because I'm only after the drivetrain. So right now we're going to go in here and we're going to start to drain all the fluids, the coolant, all that kind of stuff. I need to go around and just hit every bolt I can find that we're going to be removing with some like PB blaster or something, just to try and work some things loose. I do see we already have a broken exhaust manifold stud, so that'll be something we'll have to repair once we get the motor out. But I imagine, a 15-year-old car, we're probably going to have a few more things break on the way out. So I'm going to throw you guys in a time lapse, and I'm just going to start to take care of a lot of the boring, monotonous stuff of draining fluids and pulling out kind of easy stuff, and I'll bring you guys back when something exciting is happening. Good progress so far. You can see I got the radiator and fans out, expansion tank, the whole intake. I disconnected and have the air compressor loose. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but the AC is still charged and it works in this car. So instead of figuring out how to get it somewhere to have them discharge it, I'm just going to leave the AC system intact. So we have the condenser just sitting here, the compressor's still connected. It's just, separated, unbolted from the block. So hopefully we'll be able to wiggle it and just kind of zip tie it out of the way. And like I said, keep that AC system charged so we're not, letting out the Freon or whatever into the atmosphere like we're not supposed to. Everything else is coming off pretty easy. I have most of the wiring kind of disconnected and up out of the way. I still need to run to the store and get the fuel line quick disconnect tool so I can take that off. And then I'm about to jump under the car and start undoing, the drive shaft and cross members and all of that kind of stuff. I have been letting the exhaust, the studs and the exhaust manifolds soak in PB blaster, so I'm hoping between that and my air impact, we'll be able to get those off. Absolute worst case scenario, we can always cut them since we won't be using this exhaust on a Camaro anyway. But I believe we are ready to start lifting. So I went through and I believe I got all of the grounds, all of all the wiring I could find. I mean, this is the if you've never lifted an engine out of a car, this is like the easiest way to test the tensile strength of whatever you forgot. So there's gonna be for sure some kind of hose, some kind of wire or something that I didn't do yet. I just need to go under and pull out the transmission cross member so the trains can drop down. And then I think we're ready to pull it out. So fingers crossed, we should be ready to go. The beast is out. I'm stoked. I've been wanting to pull the engine out of this car for a year now, and believe it or not, no camera trickery or anything. This took me just over 4 hours, like 4 hours and 15 minutes from pulling the car in to having it where we are now. The only tool I did have to go run out and buy was the quick disconnect tool for the fuel lines. The GM has like a quick connect. So this is like $7 at AutoZone, so I did have to run out and get that. But that 4 hours is even including going to do that. So I probably could have done it in 3.5 hours, which is awesome. I fully expected this to take me 2 days. I actually waited until it wasn't going to rain for like 2 or 3 days so that I could leave the Camaro outside and give myself time to do this. And I'm stoked that it came out. The only issues we did have is I didn't quite have enough clearance to go over this core support. Just with like the amount of slack we had in the chain situation. So I did have to kind of use a pry bar and bend the condenser down as I was like kind of prying to get it up over. So we did destroy the condenser. Luckily, we didn't puncture it at all. I was kind of, going more off of this, not kind of directly on the condenser. So we didn't puncture it, which I'm very glad, but we did obviously smash it. But that was the only casualty. I mean, we didn't have any bolts get stuck. We didn't have any wires break. I'm actually really surprised that when I went to go pull the engine out, we didn't forget anything. It does look like somebody got murdered down there, but that's just the trans fluid that I put the little catch can down there, but obviously it didn't get all of it. So now that all of this is out, I want to get this car kind of buttoned back up so that we can push it out, and that way I can actually park the Camaro back in here tonight. I also need to go to the store and get an engine stand. I don't have one, so that I can separate these two, get the engine up on the stand, and then once I do that, I'll bring you guys back and talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing to this engine to get it ready to go into the Camaro. So. You can tell someone's definitely been in here before me. We have all that kind of blue RTV sealant, which is definitely not factory. Seems to be holding up well though. There actually isn't any oil leaks back here that I can tell. It's one of those things that, I don't know, we'll probably replace this. I probably mentioned it a few times already, but we'll probably replace that seal just as a preventative thing. Definitely got some valve cover, gasket leaks and that kind of stuff, but those are easy to replace when the engine's installed. This obviously is not. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw on the bracket. We will jack it up and put it in the seat. So what I want to do now is go ahead and pull off some of the electronics on the motor, because I want to take this thing outside and pressure wash it. It's just got grease and oil and stuff all over it, as you would imagine, especially kind of back here where the oil was leaking a lot, and then I think our front main seal is shot because the whole kind of front bottom of the motor is just coated in grease and oil. So before we start tearing the motor apart, I want to give it a really good clean. So one, it's easier to work on. Two, none of that stuff ends up in the motor when we're doing the cam swap and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to pull off things like the coil pack, and we might throw some tape or something over some of our wiring connections that we won't be removing, just so we don't get excessive water in there. After I wash it all, I am going to kind of take my air hose and blow out a lot of those just to be triple sure that they're not going to be sitting with water in them for a while. So I got pretty much all the connections that I'm worried about getting water in covered up, which really isn't much. Again, like I said, a lot of these are weather sealed and isn't going to cause any issues, especially since I'm going to dry it off immediately after. So I'm going to wheel this thing out to the driveway and just coat it down with some Zep degreaser. let it sit for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm probably going to hit it with the pressure washer again, obviously avoiding any of the spraying in the throttle body or anything like that, and hopefully it gets most of this junk off. After 2 rounds with the degreaser and the pressure washer, man, it is 100 times better. I don't know if you remember what this all looked like, but it was caked. So, yep, that Zep degreaser worked really well. No complaints there. I blew it all off with my air hose just to make sure that all the wiring connections and everything were nice and dry. I'm going to leave it out here in the Texas sun for half hour or something while I go grab some lunch, and then it'll quickly burn off any of the rest of the water, and we'll get it back in the shop. Last thing I'm going to try and do before we cut this video off is going to be see if I can remove these exhaust manifolds. I have a broken stud on this side already and a broken stud on this side already, so I'm kind of already under the impression that these are going to fight me a little bit, but we are going to give it a shot. They have to come off because we're not going to be running these anyway. So let's see. I actually soaked all of these in PB Blaster like months ago. Every time I went and started the car, kind of in preparation for this, I soaked these with PB Blaster. So we're going to see how we do. This one's coming out easy. Should have said that. I don't know if it would be better to use an impact on these and just kind of try and zap them out real quick, break anything loose as we go, or if a slow and controlled with the ratchet is better. Guess we'll find out. Well, that's where I'm going to call it on this one, guys. I think we made some pretty good progress considering this was in the GTO yesterday morning. So I need to go ahead and order some parts and some tools. So parts, I need to order the cam, the valve springs, some of the seals, maybe like oil pump, that kind of stuff that we can replace while we're in there. Some other parts, I'm sure once I kind of get in there a little bit deeper, I may need to order stuff, and so we'll kind of have to play that by ear. But I also need a tool to pull the crank pulley off, and then a valve spring compressor tool for when we actually get those parts in and go and install them. So if this is your first video on my channel, normally we do motorcycle content, but we're starting to branch out and do a couple of more videos on my 69 Camaro, which is where this engine is going to end up with that T56, and also we have a built 9-inch from Quick Performance to go in there as well. So I'm hoping to have a pretty bulletproof drivetrain. And then once that power gets, once I get used to it, we'll continue down this snowball of adding more and more horsepower as we go. But it will start off as a somewhat mild, cammed LS package, and then we'll go from there. So I will go into more details on the swap parts I have, the engine mounts, the trans mount, what ECU I'm going to run, all that kind of stuff in a future video. So if you like this content, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys soon.